Before we even dig into fossils, picture this. A bird walks up to a problem, grabs a rock, and uses it like a little hammer. Not by accident, not because it bumped into the rock and got lucky. It chooses it, carries it, and uses it. Now here's the weird part. That bird is a dinosaur, a living one. So right away, the answer to the dinosaur Stone Age question gets messy. Because if we're talking about dinosaurs as the full family, including birds, then yeah, some dinosaurs use stone tools right now. But if we're talking about the classic Mesozoic animals, the giant ones, the feathered hunters, the long-necked sauropods, the weird armored tanks, then the answer changes. For them, the answer is basically no. Or more honestly, no that we can prove. And that little difference matters a lot. The Stone Age wasn't just a random chapter where humans had bad furniture and pointy rocks. It was one of, if not the most important period in human and hominin history. It was by far the longest lasting age for us modern humans, and the homogeneous in general, starting nearly 3.4 million years ago and stretching all the way to just 2000 BC. That is when it finally came to a close after the advent of metalwork. So yeah, compared to an iPad, stoneflakes and hammerstones look primitive. Fair. But that long rock chapter is one of the reasons you get an iPad at all. I mean, maybe no iPad would have been healthier for society, but you get the point. Many scientists think that for any animal trying to climb toward greater technology, some kind of Stone Age of sorts is almost an unavoidable step. That is why people get so excited when living animals start acting like they are stepping into one. And this isn't only humans projecting onto cute animals. Researchers have reported stone tool behavior in chimpanzees, Burmese long-tailed macaques, and capuchin monkeys. Most of the time, the job is simple but clever. Crack open stubborn food. The capuchins are the really fun example here, because their behavior doesn't look like a one-week trend. There is evidence that this Stone Age behavior goes back all the way to 3,000 years ago. Stones bearing signs of repeated use have been found in the Sahara savanna, dating back to that time. And those stones show that even thousands of years ago, these primates were using different stone sizes and shapes to hammer and dig into their environment. So naturally, your brain goes, wait, if monkeys can do this, if apes can do this, and if a bunch of birds can do this, then what about dinosaurs? Not birds for a second. I mean the dinosaurs that ruled the Earth for over 160 million years. They were basically uninterrupted for that ridiculous run, suffered relatively minor extinction events during most of their reign, and evolved into a mind-boggling amount of different species and families. That is a lot of time, like an offensive amount of time. If you roll the evolutionary dice for over 160 million years, shouldn't at least one dinosaur line stumble into genius territory? Shouldn't there be one little brainiac somewhere tapping two stones together and inventing the world's first raptor garage band? Well, here is where the fossil record walks in and ruins the party. Throughout the history of paleontology, we have not found strong evidence of tool usage among non-avian dinosaurs. Not from one group, not from one place, not from one age. And as an extension of that, no stone tools have been confidently attributed to them either. So if we only go by what the fossil record currently gives us, non-avian dinosaurs did not reach a Stone Age. But that sentence needs a giant sticky note slapped onto it, because the fossil record is not a security camera. It doesn't record everything. It is more like a terrible, half-burned filing cabinet that occasionally gives us a femur. When it comes to animal bones, it is believed that less than 1 in a million are actually fossilized. And that is just bones. Tools, behavior, repeated actions, cultural habits, learning passed from one animal to another, all of that is even harder to catch. So no evidence of dinosaur tool use does not mean 100% they never did it. It means we haven't found convincing evidence that they did. And this is exactly why a few paleontologists have still poked at the idea. The arguments can get controversial pretty fast, but they are interesting, because dinosaurs were not all operating with the same hardware. Some were, running on low battery mode. Others were probably sharper than people give them credit for. Start with the least promising candidates. In brain to body size ratio, many dinosaurs look rough. No offense, but some of these animals had the energy of a desktop computer with the memory of a toaster. A 5-ton stegosaurus had a brain about the size of a walnut, or maybe a bent hot dog. The largest dinosaurs, the sauropods, had brains comparable to tennis balls, even though some of them were 100 tons in weight. For comparison, our brains are already bigger than that, and we are obviously less than 1 ton. Unless, I don't know, your mom just entered the chat. And I don't even mean our brains are only bigger relative to body size. Human brains are literally about 8 to 10 times bigger than a tennis ball. So a sauropod probably wasn't sitting under a tree inventing philosophy. Because of that, dinosaurs such as ornithischians and sauropods are generally not thought to have been as smart as mammals. They are usually treated as more comparable to modern reptiles. And honestly, that makes some sense. Brains are expensive. They take energy to build and energy to run. In a world full of giant killers, if your survival plan is grow huge, build armor, swing a tail, or become a walking fortress, then extreme intelligence may not be the best place to spend your evolutionary budget. Look at Ankylosaurus. This thing is basically a tank with a club that would give a wrecking ball insecurities. What is the strategy there? You see something, you swing. That's the meeting, no whiteboard needed. But we shouldn't make them sound completely useless mentally either. Some sauropods and hadrosaurs did interact with stones in a very real way. Fossils have been found with gastroliths inside the stomach region. In plain English, they swallowed rocks to help with digestion. That does count as dinosaurs using stones, technically, but it is probably instinctual behavior, not a clever decision to pick up a tool and solve a new problem. Then we get to the theropods, and this is where the conversation gets less silly. Theropods were the dinosaur group that largely contained the carnivorous dinosaurs, and some of them seem to have been much more intelligent than the others. On average, they had larger brains relative to body size and more neurons, which matters. It does not tell the whole story, but it matters. Even inside theropods, though, you still have levels. You had coelurosaurs and carnosaurs, with the coelurosaurs containing all theropods more closely related to birds than to carnosaurs. These are the animals that tend to get called the Einsteins of dinosaurs, because they had the highest amount of neurons. And neurons are where Tyrannosaurus rex crashed into the debate like a Tyrannosaurus rex. Not so long ago, a study looked at one of the best-known dinosaurs, the king itself, and used an endocast to estimate what was going on in its brain. The claim was that the king was really packing neurons, with an estimate of 3,289 of them. And yes, that's in the millions. That number would give T-Rex not only 10 times the neural power of a sauropod like Brachiosaurus, but also more than a baboon. And baboons have been observed using stone tools. They throw rocks. They use stones to crack open hard-shelled fruits. So you can see how someone gets from that comparison to the spicy claim that T-Rex had what it took, mentally speaking, to create tools, solve complex problems, and maybe even build various cultures. The culture part comes from another point too. Tyrannosaurs lived long enough that, in theory, they could pass information from generation to generation. So yes, if you want the most ridiculous version of the argument, you get a possible T-Rex secret society. Do I think that was happening? No. Do I enjoy the mental image? Deeply. The pushback is pretty obvious though. Having a lot of neurons does not automatically make you Isaac Newton. Where those neurons are, how they connect, and what they are actually doing all matter. In the case of T-Rex, many paleontologists think those neurons may have been there to supercharge its powerful senses, especially extraordinary smelling, instead of supporting tool creation. And then there is the body problem. A tyrannosaur was not exactly built like a craftsperson. Short arms, regressed digits, a giant head, huge teeth, giant jaws. Even if the brain had some ability to understand tools, the animal would still have trouble grasping objects, manipulating them, picking up tools, using tools, and definitely making them. So for the tyrannosaurs, I think calling them Stone Age candidates is a stretch. But T-Rex is not the whole theropod story. Honestly, it may not even be the best candidate. If you are looking for dinosaur tool use, smaller feathered theropods make more sense. Dromaeosaurs, for example, could have encephalization quotients as high as 5.8. That puts them apart of predatory mammals such as dogs or house cats, and anyone who has lived with either one knows they can be clever when they feel like it. Now, before we all start picturing Jurassic Park velociraptors opening doors, slow down. Dromaeosaurs were probably not that kind of smart, and they are not usually treated as the smartest dinosaurs anyway. That title tends to go to other, often smaller theropods with even larger brain EQs, including the Trudontids, Ornithomimidae, and the Archaeopterygidae. There is a pattern here that is hard to miss. The closer a dinosaur gets to birds, the smarter it seems to be. Across the board, these usually small theropods have larger brain cavities and EQs compared with other theropods. In dinosaur terms, you could say they were gifted. Not building rockets gifted, but gifted. Trudontids are especially interesting. They only showed up in late Jurassic, and certain genera have drawn a lot of attention because they seem to have been brighter than the average dinosaur. There is some real evidence pointing in that direction. In the North American late Nevinotrix, for example, nests tended to show higher complexities than what other dinosaurs created. Manual manipulation has been observed. They also use the Earth itself to create their intended designs.
That is not a stone axe, let's be clear, but it is behavior with planning, body control, and environmental shaping. Then you add reproductive traces showing a metabolic output extremely similar to modern birds, and some researchers see a dinosaur that may have been bird-like in meaningful ways, including possibly in intelligence. And the body plan helps the speculation. Trudontids had more dexterous hands, relatively long arms, and 3 well-developed digits. If you were trying to imagine a non-avian dinosaur picking something up and doing something precise with it, this is way more believable than a T-Rex trying to craft with 2 tiny arms and a mouthful of steak knives. That is why some people have wondered whether animals like these could have used rudimentary tools, maybe even stone tools. We do not have proof, but if you are ranking candidates, Trudontids belong near the top. This is also where Dale Russell enters the story with one of the most famous what-if ideas in dinosaur paleontology. He speculated that if a dinosaur such as the Trudontids, Stenonychosaurus, had not died out in the late Cretaceous extinction, its descendants might have evolved into the human equivalent of dinosaurs. That hypothetical species became known as the Dinosauroid. And yeah, the Dinosauroid idea got a lot of scrutiny. A lot. It is not treated like some settled prediction of evolution. But as a thought experiment, it shows how differently paleontologists have viewed Trudontids compared with many other theropods. These were not the bent, hot dog brain dinosaurs. These were the ones that made people wonder. Still, wondering is not the same thing as finding a tool, and this is the wall we keep smacking into. Even if some Mesozoic creature did use stones, proving it many millions of years later would be brutally hard. Preserving one bone is already rare. Preserving clear, repeated behavioral evidence of stone use across deep time is worse. So the honest answer for non-avian dinosaurs is still, we do not know that they did, and right now, the evidence says no.
But remember where we started. Dinosaurs are not only fossils. Birds are living dinosaurs, and birds make this entire question way more fun, because some of them are fantastic tool users. Some birds, especially corvids and parrots, show cognitive properties equal to that of great apes such as chimpanzees. One study from Boston University even found that at least one gray parrot seemed to be as smart as a 6-year-old in certain areas. That is not every bird, obviously. Not every bird is Jimmy Neutron. But crows, parrots, and partially vultures are the shining stars of the group. Part of what makes them stand out is the density of neurons in their palliums compared to other birds. Longer developmental periods and more complex niches have also been shown to line up with increased intelligence. So it isn't just that one crow did one funny thing one time. Across avian dinosaurs, we see a bunch of serious problem solving. Birds have used hard surfaces to drop prey onto so they can crack shells. And the cool part is that they can figure out what kind of surface they need depending on the shell they have to break. They have been recorded using thorns to impale prey, pieces of wood as probes, and plenty more. Tool use in birds has been studied pretty extensively, and the basic takeaway is simple. They are smart fellas.
Now for stone tools specifically, birds still do surprisingly well. Trinidadian matmats use stones along forest floors as anvils to crack the shells and exoskeletons of arthropods and snails. Egyptian vultures are even more direct about it. They equip rocks with their beaks and use them to hammer open ostrich eggs. Crows add another layer. They have been observed placing stones into various water vessels to displace the water and raise the surface level, making it easier for them to drink. That is not just hit food with rock. That is understanding a physical problem and changing the setup. And the crow family gets a little wild with rocks too. Certain species, like many of the ravens, have been noted using rocks as weapons, dropping them on dogs to make a statement. They also seem to have a clear conceptualization of the purpose of man-made tools after watching those tools be used. That last part matters because it feeds into something bigger than one clever trick. Multiple corvids have learned to build tools after viewing our own tools, and then they have taught others of their kind how to do it too. That means information can move from one bird to another in the immediate sense, and also to the next generation. That transfer of information is a big deal. Scientists view it as an integral part of our own Stone Age. It is not just the rock, it is the knowledge. It is this animal learning a useful behavior, repeating it, and letting that behavior outlive the individual. Then there are hooks. Not made of stone, sure, but still a major technological behavior. Corvids have constructed hooks through twigs that can be used to catch grub. That matters because the invention of hooks is sometimes seen as going hand in hand with our own Stone Age journey. And the timing makes that even crazier. For humans, barb-edged tools only show up about 90,000 years ago. That is the latter part of modern humans' existence. So when a bird starts doing hook-like tool work, it feels a little less like a cute animal trick and a little more like a tiny door opening somewhere. Some of the exceptionally smart birds can even make tools out of multiple parts. That is a big step beyond modifying one twig or using one stone. It means combining pieces toward a goal. And then comes the big speculative thought. If great apes went extinct, humans included, and birds survived, could they be the next group with a shot at civilization? Maybe, maybe not. But they do have some of the ingredients people like to point at. Longer lifespans, strong social bonds, behavioral flexibility, complex communication, and the ability to problem solve. Of course, that is experimental thinking. It is not a prediction you should bet your rent on. But it is fun to imagine a world where birds became the smartest group on the planet. A crow city, parrot engineers, vultures with egg-hammering traditions that got completely out of hand. I mean, terrifying, but fun. So where does that leave the original question? Were dinosaurs ever in a Stone Age? If you mean the extinct, non-avian dinosaurs, the best answer is no, with a very heavy asterisk. We have no strong fossil evidence, no confirmed stone tools, and no clear sign that any of them crossed that line. But the fossil record is too incomplete to turn that into a perfect 100% denial. If you mean dinosaurs as a whole, including birds, then the answer changes. Some dinosaurs do use stones. Some use them as anvils. Some use them as hammers. Some use them to raise water. Some use rocks in ways that honestly feel a little too clever for comfort. So no, we probably did not miss an ancient T-Rex Stone Age hiding somewhere in the Mesozoic. But the dinosaur story did not end with the asteroid. It kept flying around, screaming in trees, stealing snacks, solving puzzles, and every now and then, picking up a rock and doing something weirdly smart with it. But I guess if birds ever do become the next civilization, we probably won't be around to see that day. Thanks for watching, and until next time.